Let's begin with what it looks like this morning, or since this morning, on the ground in Gaza, this next part of the operation for Israel, and very much focused on southern Gaza.
It is, but it's worth just setting the context. At 5 o'clock this morning, obviously, the latest truce ended. That marked the end of 7 days of truce. But 30 minutes after the end of that truce, Israeli jets were bombing Gaza. We've got some footage of that happening now. The Hamas and the Islamic Jihad were also throwing rockets across into Israel as well. Israel was also dropping leaflets advising the population of the southern part of Gaza, Khan Yunis, to actually move away. And they've also released, the first time, they've released a grid map like this. Without going into the detail of it, what they're effectively doing is saying if you were living in one of these grid areas, get out for a particular phase of the operation, because it'll be a lot easier for the locals to actually get away. But it does expose the fact that they're serious about doing the bombing campaign, potentially in that next phase. So this is a new development on the ground. Yeah,
and does this signify, I guess, a new phase in Israel's operation?
It does. I mean, I think, the fact that the truce has ended, Israel is firmly determined to do phase 2, which is in the southern part. And because the objectives haven't changed. It's still to destroy Hamas and liberate hostages. But the southern part of Gaza has got a much greater propensity of people, a much greater density of population. And it's worth looking at the numbers. So in the north, so far, Israel's claimed that they've managed to kill 5,000 Hamas fighters, which is about 20% of the total, 25,000 total. But in doing so, the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Authority says that 15,000 Palestinians total have died, and also quite a number have hidden under the rubble, quite apart from the humanitarian situation. So if actually Israel is to actually kill all of Hamas, 25,000, extrapolate the numbers, it's likely there will be at least 60,000 more Palestinian deaths as a result. And that's not allowing for the increased population density. And what we're seeing on the ground, the international pressure just mounting, particularly from the US, urging restraint about civilian casualties. So it's looking increasingly unlikely that, from a military perspective, that military action is going to deliver what Israel is seeking to achieve. But the IDF seems absolutely determined to put pressure on Hamas so that when we have truces like this, that actually Hamas sticks to its word and they're seen through.
Yeah, and I guess the IDF must be, or the War Cabinet must be realising perhaps that international pressure will increase, and perhaps that their time is running out on the military part of this offensive. Over the next few days, what do you see happening, both on the ground and also in terms of those mediations?
One of the concerns this morning was that people said, this is all-out war happening. I'm not so sure that's true. Behind the scenes, we're seeing, hostage releases happening all the time. Qataris are still working behind the scenes to try to negotiate a new truce. Harsh reality, though, is that it's becoming increasingly difficult because the hostages, there's different categories of hostages. The first were women and children. We've largely seen a focus on those, and we've seen one hostage release for 3 Palestinian prisoners. But the next category will be young men, and it'll also be the foreign nationals, and undoubtedly Hamas will seek a higher tariff for those, and that will be difficult to negotiate. And of course the final class will be the Israeli military, the soldiers that have been held captive. Very difficult to see they're going to be released anytime soon. So all of the negotiations are particularly difficult, particularly because the value Hamas puts against them. The great thing is, though, that both sides are clearly incentivised to make this work. Israel wants the hostages, Hamas needs the pauses, but we are going to see that. So I do expect we're going to see regular truces, but we are going to see a resumption of military activity every time that Hamas looks like it's not going to meet the deadlines, because the IDF will be very, very keen to put the pressure on Hamas to stick to its word or suffer the consequences.
Yeah, and I guess just very quickly, what the interest is for Hamas to release those last hostages when we get to that point, when they know that what comes next is obliteration from the IDF?
The most likely scenario is that they'll gradually reduce the number of hostages from 10 a time down, and once they get to a handful, less than 10, almost certainly that will become very, very difficult. But by that stage, will Israel really go to war, and with all the consequences and the lack of progress, for just 10 hostages, which will be increasingly difficult to find? It's a lot easier to hide 10 hostages than 238.